Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stevenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. And this month, we've got a great episode lined up for you. It was actually recorded around late November of 2023. I was able to sit down with some of the communicators from the Louisiana Forestry Association, Florida Forestry Association, and Texas Forestry Association to discuss some of the things that forestry associations do for its members. We all kind of have the same goal, but go about it a little bit differently, have other issues that we focus on, and we discuss that here in this episode. So this was a pre-recorded episode. I wanted to kind of give that disclaimer up front, but I do want to give a special thank you to Leanne and Susan here in the episode who you will meet for joining us. Jeff Zerang from Louisiana, they also have a podcast, and this was his idea to get all of us together since we were at a meeting in Alabama around that time. So I want to give a special thank you and shout out to all three of them for joining us on this episode. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you, of course, to our sponsor this month, DDK Forestry and Real Estate. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in this episode. But for now, enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you guys at the tail end of the episode. So I think this episode probably needs a little bit of a preface, if you will, as to what exactly is going on. So every year, a group of these Southern Forestry Associations gather together. We've been gathering in Montgomery, Alabama for the past couple of years to sit down and talk about what we do or what we've been doing, what's been working, what issues are we having. And so we thought this would be a great idea and a great time to sit down with some of our counterparts in some of the other states and kind of talk about what we do as associations for our members. Right now, we've got 4 folks on the show. Me from the Arkansas Forestry Association. We've got Jeff Zerang and Leanne Jeff from Louisiana, Leanne from Florida, and Susan from Texas. But I will let them give introductions. So let's kind of kick that off first. Jeff, do you want to kind of introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Jeff Zerang with the Louisiana Forestry Association. Been here about 7 years, and we try and reach out and get our message to all of Louisiana and beyond for what's going on in sustainable forestry.
And you are the host of?
I am the host of Minding the Forest, which is a podcast of the LFA.
All right. Leanne?
Hi, I'm Leanne Fish with the Florida Forestry Association. I have had the pleasure of working with them for 11 years now. And we really focus on telling the forestry story in Florida and trying to secure the sustainability of the forest in our state.
Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Stutz, Texas Forestry Association. We also try to do a good job of presenting the forestry message throughout Texas. We represent people who grow, manage, harvest, and process forest products in East Texas.
All right. And I'm Seth Stevenson. I'm the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. I've been there for about 5.5 years, and you can kind of see some common threads here. We also are advocates of the forestry community in Arkansas, and we also are trying to tell the story of forestry to folks in the state and outside of the state to kind of show what exactly we're doing, not only in Arkansas, but in the southern states. And that's why I think we wanted to sit down and have a kind of group conversation, comparing, contrasting what we're doing with the similar goals in mind. So I guess, does somebody want to kind of kick it off? I mean, we should say this too, Jeff. We are going to have this same episode on both your podcast and Arkansas's podcast, Voices of Forestry. We just as a collaborative effort, because we thought this would be a good topic for both of us.
So if you're listening to both of the podcasts, then you'll have a repeat.
Yeah, you may have a repeat. Yeah, for sure. But that's totally fine. This is just a way for us to kind of get some more messaging out there and get a diverse cast of folks here on the episode. So I guess, Leanne, do you want to kind of talk about some of the things that you guys are doing in Florida? Again, we're going to have some common threads here, but it's a good way to kind of showcase what we're doing and some of the differences to tell that story.
Sure. One of the things that I'm really excited about, we've been doing for about 6 years now, is we have a statewide Florida Forest Week to raise awareness of the forestry in Florida. Florida is a little bit different as far as forestry goes from a lot of states. We have 17.1 million acres of forest in Florida, but they're all north of Ocala, which is about the halfway mark in Florida. So we have highly forested areas, and then we have no forested areas. So with Florida Forest Week, what we're trying to do is to basically just raise awareness of the forest, their importance on economic and environmental areas. And we really get our members involved, because that is one thing that we have found is membership involvement is crucial to getting out the forestry story. They tell the forestry story in their own ways to their own audiences, and it's been a really effective method of telling the forestry story. Other than that, we use the obvious social media, newsletters, magazines, the usual PR tools.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to kick it off for us. I'd love to hear, like what other organizations' main focus is.
Well, and Susan, it sounds like Texas, y'all were throwing out some stats the other day. It sounds like Texas is kind of in a similar boat, because you guys only was it less than half of the state is forested in Texas?
We have 254 counties in Texas, and 43 are forested, all in East Texas.
So what are you guys doing in the Lone Star State there to kind of tell the story?
We look at it right now as wood is in a really good place. Trees are in a good place, climate change. And of course, trees store carbon. So that's a message that we're really trying to get out all across the state. We have to, reach legislators in urban areas. And so that, and the fact that a new way to build with timber, with mass timber, that's kind of new. It's been on the horizon for a little while, but there's a lot of mass timber building going on, and we're trying to promote that. We're also looking at ways to provide more diversity to our forest landowners. There was a time when you planted, you harvested, you planted, you harvested again. But there's a lot of diversity now. There's a lot of diversity in forest landowners. We have a lot of people buying smaller acreages just to have their own little piece of Texas. And so, growing timber and selling timber might not be the most important thing to these people. So we're trying to reach out to them as well. We have a great board of directors and leadership in Texas Forestry Association. We've been around since 1914. It's evolved considerably over the years, but we represent, in the legislative arena, we represent landowners and loggers and mills and foresters, and then we try to provide a lot of education to every member in Texas Forestry Association, whether it's a forest landowner or a logging contractor or somebody new. There's a lot of new landowners, not only in Texas, but in your states as well. And so we try to provide them with information and education that will help them sustain their little piece of forest in years to come.
What I find interesting, especially when you're talking about the diversity in land ownership, in Louisiana, there's a lot of generational change, and some of these generations are coming into land ownership because family members have passed, and the land goes on to the next generation, and they don't have a clue about forestry. They have this land, and in some cases, they've never been, and so we are hopeful that these folks can contact us, and we can help kind of walk them through how to really make their acreage better, to earn resources from their property so that they can continue to have forests on their property.
And Jeff, that's something that we encourage our landowners, bring in that next generation, make them a member of Texas Forestry Association so they can get the materials and the outreach and the knowledge that comes with the association and comes with networking with other people in the association. We encourage that so much because it's very important. We want them to keep their land in forest land. We want that next generation to be able to do that.
something that we discourage is for that next generation to do something else with it, that it's not forested, because they lose the benefits. And these are benefits, as you all know, these are benefits that aren't just for the ones who own the property. It's for people who live in the region. Everyone who maybe lives in an apartment high-rise in an urban area benefits from the forest just as well as the folks who are managing them.
And I think that's, one of the big things that you'll see with us as associations is just trying to provide that education and that information. So people who have absolutely no idea about forestry, like I did 5.5 years ago when I started this job, have at least some place to go and people to talk to. That's something we tout on our show a lot, is if you don't know something, pick up a phone and just start making calls, to us, to consulting foresters, to whomever, because there are people out there willing and wanting to help you. They want to make sure that those forests stay forests and stay sustainably managed forests, and they don't want to see something else happen to it. Some of these people that we work with have been working with families for years, or have been working the same property for years, and they love that land just as much as the landowner does. So there are people out there willing to help and to provide assistance, especially for people who have just inherited something that they may not know anything about.
They look at the land as a valuable item, and it really is. And the values that I know we've experienced, the same thing as Florida, Texas, and Arkansas, is now what do I do with it? And it takes resources to keep them as forests. I mean, and that is the long-term goal, I think, for everyone.
Here in Arkansas, the tree farm program falls under the umbrella of the Arkansas Forestry Association. They have their own tree farm committee, and we have our tree farm program administrator, Anna Sparks, who kind of runs all of that. But it still is under the AFA umbrella. Is that similar to you guys in some of these other states? How does your tree farm program kind of operate?
That's exactly how it is in Texas, and I actually run that program as well. It's a great certification program, the American Tree Farm System. It's a great certification program for especially smaller acreage landowners, because it's very cost effective and it provides a lot of opportunities. When somebody calls our office, Seth, and says, "Hey, I just bought some land, and what do I do?" And we really encourage them to join our association and put them in contact with our website and people on our website. We have a Texas Accredited Foresters database on our website, and that's a great way to start with, for new landowners.
We have a similar thing for our consulting foresters who are members. We have them on a locator map on our website. So if you are living in a particular zip code, you can tap that in and see what consulting foresters are in your area. So you have a chance to decide who you want to go to. You can call all of them and get whatever they do, the rates at which they charge, and find out more information from the individual forester. But they have that opportunity to find that on our website.
And so for Louisiana, the tree farm program, correct me if I'm wrong, does fall under the Louisiana Forestry Association umbrella.
Yes, it does. We have someone in-house who handles the organization of all that. And actually, in the last year, we've had more inquiries about tree farms and how to make their property a tree farm. So that's been a pretty good experience for us.
Yeah. So we've hammered education a good amount here, providing workshops or just avenues to get information from professionals. Because I don't believe any of us here in the room are foresters by any stretch of the imagination. So we are providing that to our members and even people who are just trying to figure out what in the world they're doing with this property they may have inherited. Let's kind of shift gears a bit, if y'all don't mind, and kind of talk about more of an advocacy perspective. Again, none of us are lobbyists, I don't believe, here in the room, but can y'all kind of talk about what your associations are doing from an advocacy perspective?
I'll jump in with this because in October, Florida was hit with a major hurricane. And not that there's ever a good place for a hurricane to hit. It came on land in a major forested area in Taylor County in the Panhandle and just devastated the area. So we have been very active advocating for the people who were impacted by that storm, trying to get them help, trying to get state and federal programs to help with reforestation, to help with any kind of hurricane relief and recovery. The same thing happened in 2018. Major Hurricane Michael hit another very proficient part of the wood basket in Florida. And we were actually able to be part of a federal program for the first time that usually deals with row crops and that side of agriculture, but we were able to get grants for our people as well. And so that's one of the big things that we'll be working on, is helping those people recover and trying to get resources for that. Because, I mean, it is unbelievably expensive to clean up after a hurricane.
Oh, I bet.
And that's just the cleanup part of it. That's not the replanting and everything else that goes with it.
And that's something that all three of you probably deal with, because, Arkansas is a landlocked state, but, we all kind of deal with different natural disasters or stuff of that ilk, I guess, that you guys are always having to be constantly aware of for your members.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year in Louisiana, we had Hurricane Ida that came through. And then a couple of years before that was Hurricane Laura, or actually Hurricanes Laura and Delta. Two pretty powerful storms. I think Laura, when it passed through, got to Arkansas before it became a tropical storm. But it moved fast, so there's a lot of wind damage, but not too much rain. Delta came practically the same. I think the entry point was 15 miles from where Laura hit, and it followed much of the same path. That was a slower moving storm, a lot of rain, and so you have all these downed trees, and then you have all this rain, making everything soggy. So the fear is in the coming years, you have that debris on the ground because you're not going to get it all. You're not going to get it chipped. You're not going to get it to where it can be used. So you are going to put a lot of dead trees in the ground and open up the possibility of insects and disease. And so that's another part of the education that we help out with. And also getting, like Leanne had said, for Florida, getting help from Department of Ag and Forestry in Louisiana or other state or federal programs to help in the cleanup and the replanting. One thing that we really hope does not happen in those natural disaster events is a landowner may find that it's difficult to get the resources to plant again, and then that becomes something other than forests. And so you lose that capability of carbon storage, of filtering the water. I mean, all the benefits that you get from managed forest, you lose when it doesn't happen. So that's one thing that we try and do as well, to encourage that, like Leanne had said, to kind of guide them through the process.
And I think that's a big part of what we do in general, from advocacy, education, communication, whatever, is being available to people, especially in times of need, but also outside of that, to provide that assistance. Because we don't want people just to throw up their hands and say, I'm done. We want them to keep doing what they're doing.
Right. One example I can give is in Louisiana, they have the program through the Department of Ag and Forestry, the Forest Productivity Program. As a landowner, you can apply for a grant. Basically, it will reimburse up to, I think, 75%. So you make a plan with your forester, you can go ahead and replant everything and submit that plan. Of course, before you replant, you want to submit the plan and get it approved, because it is a limited basis. And this is a government program that's paid for through tax dollars that are collected from the landowners when they sever the timber from their property. So they are taxed when they harvest, but at least some of that money comes back to them to help in keeping their forest. And the majority of it actually goes back to the parish where the timber was harvested. So that's putting your tax dollars at least at work to keep that going.
One advantage that Florida has is we have a new commissioner of agriculture, and he has an ag background, and he has been, since he came into office, just a tremendous advocate for forestry and agriculture. He really understands it from the ground level, and he has unlocked some state resources that previously have not necessarily been available. Because with Florida, like I said, all the forestry is in the north, all the people are in the south. So we have what we call the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people live south, 80% of the representatives and senators are from south of Ocala and 20% are north. All the 80% of the forest are north of Ocala and 20% are south. So we appreciate that strong leadership when it's available, to educate the urban and the beachgoers. Because, that's really what Florida is known for, is the beaches, when really we have so many amazing forests.
And I think that kind of hearkening back to our education discussion kind of proves too that it's not just about educating landowners or students or teachers. It's also about educating elected officials, because not all of them probably represent areas that have forestry. So you do have to have some education to those people who are making the decisions or making the laws in your respective states, to make sure that forestry doesn't get kind of the short end of the stick, so to speak. So that education aspect does come into the advocacy side of things as well.
I think in Texas, we had some really good legislation passed this year that TFA and all of our partners worked on to strengthen the timber theft laws. That benefits landowners, loggers, mills, everybody. So we had that. We had a great state rep that helped us with that, and we got that passed. One of the things that we're doing, though, we've done more of this year than in several years, is forestry tours for legislators. We've brought in, we had some congressional folks come in, Mr. Westerman from Arkansas, and with some of our Texas congressional folks have come in to have meetings. And then we've had a lot of different tours, and that's a really big deal.
Oh, for sure.
We do a lot of them ourselves, but we also partner with the Texas Farm Bureau and other organizations to provide, the whole gamut of, a tree farm and a logging job and a processing mill. And when they come in and they see that hands-on, that really makes a difference. And reaching out to state legislators and even, like I said, some of the congressional legislators has been I think a really plus. And if people are able to do that, it doesn't take nearly as much time as you think it does. But that's something that we've done quite a bit of. Our executive director sets those up, and we're able to do, quite a bit of it. I think, Seth, if I could switch gears just a little bit as far as outreach, promoting the benefits of trees, like in our Arbor Day, our state Arbor Day celebration this year was titled "If Trees Could Talk." We partnered with the state forestry agency, Texas A&M Forest Service, and just telling our message of what all trees provide, not only products and housing and carbon storage, but also, clean air, clean water. A lot of people don't realize, well, how can trees provide clean water? Well, 34% of the drinking water in Texas is filtered through trees. And that's a really big deal. I think people don't understand that. We also, have to promote, we harvest trees, but in the entire South, not just in Texas, but in the entire South, we are growing a lot more than we are harvesting right now. And that puts trees and forests and all of us who work in the forests in a really good spot right now.
DDK proudly supports the AFA. In 1962, Mr. Jerry Davis started DDK with a core value of wanting to help forest landowners. With the professional services DDK provides, they allow landowners to have complete confidence in their portfolio, knowing that their property is managed at the highest level from an expert team with years of experience. Give DDK Forestry and Real Estate a call today and let them help you begin your land legacy. 501-219-8600 or visit them at forestryrealestate.com.
We have a lot of stories to tell, and I think that's what we in Arkansas are doing with Voices of Forestry, and Louisiana is doing with Mining the Forests. We have a lot of different stories to tell, whether it is the story of a family who's owned a tree farm for 100 years, or it's forests can provide clean drinking water. There's a bunch of different things that we have to share to maybe persuade people that what we're doing in the States is not what's going on over in South America or Europe or whatever.
Right.
It's different. We're sustainably managing things that benefits us as a human race in the long run. And that's, I think, another big part of our jobs as a forestry association is just telling those stories, however we choose to do it.
And another thing that's really been on everybody's radar are the catastrophic fires.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Louisiana was hit hard this
Yeah,
year. Texas
sure
was
was.
hit hard this year, but not as hard as we have been in the past. But I'm talking about out in California and a lot of the Pacific Northwest. And we're able to tell the science behind why it's a good thing to have prescribed burns, why it's a good thing to have forest management to help combat the onset of catastrophic fires or, you know, disease, pests and disease. So that's just a story that we're able to tell. And there's so much more to growing trees than, you know, making lumber.
Oh, for
Which
sure.
lumber's great, but
Yeah, and it's, you know, I don't want to bully California or the West, but I mean we have proof, and especially in our southern states, that prescribed fire works. I mean, we're not having
Absolutely.
to worry about wildfire season and you know millions of people losing their homes or whatever because that we have been doing the work and being responsible about it.
Right.
So, you know, we have the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, and when we can kind of show that what we're doing is working.
Yeah, because the evidence is really clear. If you look at Louisiana this past year, middle of the drought, Louisiana's kind of drought central. Central Louisiana especially was hardest hit with that. We've had temperatures during the summer of triple digit highs for an extended period, and yet. And of course, if it's like anything else. If it's a disaster that affects your property, it's absolutely the worst thing. But Louisiana lost only about 65,000 acres due to wildfires this year. And yes, that is a lot, but it could have been worse if there was more fuel on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you compare what happened in Louisiana to some of the fires out west where they're losing hundreds of thousands of acres, I think the evidence is certainly clear that that's a huge benefit.
And I think bringing this all back together, the federal government has recognized this. Look at all the money that is coming into forestry through the federal government now. There's boatloads of money out there available to landowners for management practices and pests and disease, and through a lot of different programs, not only in the rural forests, but also in urban forestry. That's going to be a really big deal. I know a lot of that goes back to climate change but hey, you know, it's a good time to own a few trees.
Absolutely.
We try not to call it climate change. We try to call it carbon focused.
Carbon focused. Well,
Carbon focused.
that's true because climate change has become more of a political mantra than it is.
Absolutely.
It's a reality, of course, because we have a living planet. Every living thing is going to change over time. I think science has shown that, and I think the sensibilities of people know this. So, yes, it does change. But it doesn't mean that it changes for the worse, and it doesn't mean that there are things that we can't do, such as planting more trees to absorb some of that CO2 that's in the air. That seems to be the big topic of discussion.
Well, our old state forester, Joe Fox, who just retired here this year, he's probably even said it on this show when I've had him on here, but he used to say, trees are the answer. What's your question? And that was always his kind of response to these discussions of climate change or, what have you. But that's kind of something that we in Arkansas have kind of stuck with and have repeated multiple times, his little mantra that he would say.
It's a good mantra.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And the really cool thing about, even though we're not talking about climate change, so many more different diverse industries are able to utilize wood waste and first thinnings and things like that people need a market for to provide biofuels and pellets for pellet mills. And, that's a good thing. And that's been a really good thing, I think, for this industry. We have our building materials and everything, which are wonderful, and all of our paper goods, which are wonderful. But to be able to take it a step further when, citizens are saying, we need to combat climate change and being able to do some different things. And that's been really good, I think.
Marcus, that's an interesting thing to talk about. The economics of forestry certainly help the rural areas more so than the urban areas. Urban areas seem to have the benefit of the products that are made from forestry, but they don't have the raw product, the trees necessarily, in their living space. They may see it on the sidewalk and see a tree there, or the urban forestry has come about a little bit better, but not like the rural areas. I'll give an example of Canfor Southern Pine. They just completed a mill in the southwestern part of the Louisiana, so that will help landowners in southwest Louisiana and East Texas, because trees will be coming in from Texas to make the lumber as well as from Louisiana. So that plant opens, and you've got over 100 jobs, well-paying jobs, for people in rural communities. They don't have to commute, or they don't necessarily have to work offshore. They can work closer to home. And they are part of this cycle of helping trees to be harvested and then replanted. It's a huge benefit to rural Louisiana, or rural America, really, for what forestry offers.
Oh, yeah. These small communities, and this isn't necessarily an exaggeration. I mean, some of these small communities, especially in Arkansas, live and die by the forestry industry. And if the forestry industry is not doing well, then the one major employer in this small community goes under, then you've got a whole community that just is struggling. And so without these strong markets, forestry markets, there are literal lives, not death or anything, but their well-being are at stake. Mm-hmm.
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Seth, a mill closes. Well, they've got their mill employees and their managers. They've got to relocate somewhere. They've got logging contractors that supply their mill. Suddenly, they don't have that contract anymore, and so they have to go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people don't realize that, but it's great to see markets, especially in, all of our states, I think right now are really seem to be growing the different markets, and that's a good thing.
And the ripple effect actually goes out a lot farther than that, because when the people leave because of the mill closure or whatever, then the teachers who taught those kids don't have the classrooms that they used to. The waitresses at the restaurants don't have the customers that they used to. We did an economic impact survey, I think it was back in 2016, and that was one of the big eye-opening things that it showed, is that a lot of our rural communities are highly dependent on forestry, not just the people who work for it directly, but the ones who reap the indirect economic benefits as well. Yeah.
And no, you go ahead, Jeff.
For example, the governor's office in Louisiana is always quick to tout a new economic development of a new mill here, a new mill there. That's great. Matter of fact, the outgoing governor of Louisiana is a member of the LFA, so we're happy about that. He understands that process. So they always are happy to say, well, this new facility is going to bring in 120, 125 jobs. And then they go to the indirect jobs, and that could be anywhere from 200 to 400 for the region. So you have to take into account in the effect where it closes, it's the reverse effect. So you're going to lose not just those 120, 125 jobs. What about a 200 to 400 jobs, like Leanne was saying in Florida? I mean, the same thing for any of those rural communities. If they lose that, it has a much bigger impact than they imagine.
It really does. And I'll give you an example. If a paper mill makes large rolls, of paper, bleached or unbleached paper, and then those go off to different secondary manufacturers to make paper bags or whatever they're going to make out of them. And so when, a rural paper mill closes and then there's a paper manufacturer up in Fort Worth, Dallas, it affects them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's just a
and I think
example.
that's something that we all are doing, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, but that's something, again, that we all are doing as associations, maybe not necessarily us specifically, but our coworkers and our bosses are working on to make sure those forestry markets are strong in our individual states or just across the South in general, because we're all working together in some shape, form, or fashion. Because, as we've discussed, without those strong markets, it's devastating on the people that we are trying to work for and represent.
Mm-hmm. Actually, in the coming year, 2 of our major communications initiatives will be about building stronger markets and anti-greenwashing, because greenwashing is when companies use the save a tree, go paperless kind of thing. And we will try to educate the general public that you can save a tree, but you really need to think about the forest and the whole need for a strong market so that the landowner can afford to keep the land managed and keep it in forestry.
Well, I think this is a good segue as we kind of start to put a bow on this conversation into kind of what we as individual associations are doing or looking to accomplish here in the coming future. For instance, Arkansas has been hitting workforce development. I know everyone has heard, their respective industries are needing workers. Forestry is no different. So we have really been working hard on workforce development and introducing students specifically to green careers, maybe not necessarily even in forestry, but just the idea of the green sector, trying to get kids interested in stuff like that. We have a Green Careers Expo that we held here not too terribly long ago. It was the second one that we had that's designed to kind of travel across Arkansas and introduce and talk to different schools around the state. We partner with Forestry Works here based out of Alabama and our Be Pro Be Proud program, which these are all topics I want to go into further detail on in our show. But, we've really been hitting the ground hard trying to beef up this aspect of our industry and get more people, more potential employees to places like the mills or our state forestry division. So what are you guys doing?
I think we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
We have an education director, and we're probably doing a little bit of a shift in our project learning tree. Yes, we'll continue the younger children, the K-8, K-12 models, but we're doing more with green jobs. Forestry Works is something we're definitely about to look at.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great tool. And it's evolved, and it's a little, more open to more states, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we will be looking at. We did do something recently, which is so exciting. Everybody has ag extension in their states. Well, our Texas AgriLife extension kind of came to us and said, we'd like to get our local agents involved in Project Learning Tree. So we held a 3-day workshop a couple of weeks ago and trained, I believe, 16 or 19 new facilitators, and they were excited and they liked it.
Were they doing like little crafts?
They
like
do all kinds of
okay,
things. Yeah. But that will, that's K through 12, and that will bring in green jobs. We're doing some video and things about green jobs. There's so many different kinds of green jobs now. You could be in the mill working on a computer to get lumber made, or you could be, loading a truck or marking timber, or there's just so many things out there. A lot of environmental jobs now with these different mills and companies and things. So it's a good place to be. And we're definitely, like you all, working to promote that more.
What are y'all doing in Louisiana, Jeff?
We are really just still being an education arm. We are working with the Department of Economics, the LED, Louisiana Economic Development. When times come up and we can work with, like, for example, when Canfor came in, when Tolco and Hunt Forest Products, that's a local Louisiana company partnering with a Canadian company. They have one state-of-the-art mill that's already up and running, and the partnership has worked out so well so far that they have a second project that's coming online in the early part of next year. They're supposed to be doing testing at the mill between now and the end of the year, and they'll hope to be geared up sometime next year. So that's really exciting news. We have another new mill in Plain Dilling that's under construction right now. So we, especially Buck, will go in and provide information to LED about where in the wood basket of Louisiana is best to operate. These latest three have been really, really a big boost. The more we can get in that course, the better it's going to better help us. But yeah, we'll work with state government to help get these big companies in and get them established and get their facilities built.
Well, and it's it takes a village, not only to raise a kid, but to do what it is that we're trying to do, working with our individual state organizations and other people too. We have at least 2 other forestry kind of based associations in Arkansas that we work with pretty closely to accomplish some of our goals. Because again, we're all working for the same kind of thing. But I guess, is there anything else anybody wants to add before we kind of finish this up? I mean, that's fine. And, so this is just 4 of the however many associations we had here in Alabama at this little meeting. Some of the other things that other associations are doing is providing insurance. We can't really speak too much to that because we're not a part of those associations. But Alabama and North Carolina are providing health insurance to their members. So just another kind of example of what it is that some of our associations are doing for its members.
And that goes back to the economics of it, because many small companies have difficulty providing insurance, or it's so costly that they have to make a hard decision. Do we give this benefit to the families that we help support through these businesses, or do we decide that, well, you're on your own and you'll have to decide how are you going to insure your family? I think it's hugely beneficial for programs like that. I think Louisiana's going to be looking into getting that established. We
are doing a lot in our respective states for our members and for our forests. And it is nice to get to have this little get together every year to where we can kind of talk. Because, the insurance thing with Alabama and North Carolina, we didn't know about it, I don't think. And so it was good to kind of get that idea. And I'm sure all of us, plus our respective executives, are going home with a notebook full of notes to kind of take back to our states and see if that works for our folks in our homes. So we're working in our individual states, but we're also collaborating and trying to make sure we're all telling the same story and accomplishing the same goal of keeping our forests, sustainably managing our forests, and making sure that market, that ecosystem stays healthy and beneficial.
I love to get up in front of a group of landowners, and I do this quite often, or a group of loggers or whomever, and talk about the benefits that our association provides, just like your associations provide, and how what we do, whether it's on advocacy, education, information, we're a highly good source of information benefits everybody, whether they're, really a member or not.
For sure.
And we have great members. I came into this association 26 years ago and from industry, and so it was real different. But I have learned over the years what a wonderful organization it is, and how we are so blessed to be part of associations that has such a diverse groups of people. So, and how we kind of have to look out for everybody. And, it's a great way to come together and get work done, get things done. And I really appreciate these yearly Southern Forestry Association meetings. These have been really, really good.
For sure. Well, Leanne, Susan, thank you guys for joining us. Jeff and I are, I don't want to say podcast pros, but we do this a little more regularly than you guys, and hopefully this wasn't too uncomfortable a situation for you both. Leanne's saying it was. She's not voicing it, but she's mouthing it. Well, we appreciate you guys kind of joining us because, Jeff brought this idea to me, and we thought it would be interesting just to have everybody on here.
Oh, I think it's great. Thank you for asking us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate you guys.
Seriously, I do appreciate the opportunity. And, anytime you can get a message like this out, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And that's the show. Thank you guys again for joining us this month. Again, thank you to Leanne and Susan and Jeff for joining us this month and kind of participating in this little experiment with us to kind of see if this is something that we can maybe do once a year, talking with some of our other friends from some of the other Southern Forestry Associations. We'll see when that time comes. And I want to give another special thank you to our sponsors this month, DDK Forestry and Real Estate, for their continued support of the show. And as always, a special shout out to some guy named Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love, from his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his music on Spotify. And as always, we'll have a link to his website in the description of this episode. And while I'm thinking about it, go listen to Jeff Zerang and Louisiana Forestry Association's show, Mining the Forest. If you like our show, I know you're going to like their show. Just some more forestry information from a little bit of a different perspective, kind of like what you heard in this episode, just talking about some of the stuff going on in Louisiana. Jeff's a great guy and his show's great, so go give that a listen as well. And make sure you come back here next month to Voices of Forestry, when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and of course, a new Voice of Forestry.